when I was working on Harry Potter, Warner Brothers hosted the editorial department to a early screening of AI, which wasn't scheduled to come out until fall of 2001, even though it had come out in June in the States. And so I gathered the editorial department and then ran into Dan Radcliffe and Rupert Grint and invited them and their families to come to the screening. It was down in central London at the Warner Brothers screening room. And the reactions were really interesting. I mean, most of the editorial staff, were younger, and they didn't connect to the story at all, and were very lukewarm in their reaction. But Daniel's mother, Marcia, when the scene where the mother leaves David, the robot son, in the forest, and he's begging her not to go. Marcia just broke down, and she was affected. I mean, Daniel said for the next 24 hours, she would just cry, and so it either really affects you, or it seemed one way or the other. Either you weren't affected, or it affected you deeply. So, and I love that about films. It's that not everybody's going to react the same way, but that's okay. So.
Yeah, I remember I love AI. I've watched that maybe 20 times or something. And as I've gotten older, the reasons I like it have changed.
Yeah.
So firstly, I loved all the science fiction elements. I thought they were amazing in the visuals. But now I really attached to that last moment with, the son and his mum when he gets to spend that sort of, perfect day with her for his last moment. It's just, and that's interesting. I've heard a lot of people actually talk about that film saying similar things, that they initially weren't too keen on it when they were younger. They didn't really get it. And then when they've gotten older, they're like, oh, wow, okay, now I really get it.
I mean, Empire of the Sun's one, too.
Oh, yeah.
That when it came out, people didn't respond to it very well. It did badly. But they've reassessed and now understand, what Jim, how it changed him in the concentration camp, and that he would never be a child again. And that connects with a lot of people.
I think what's interesting about that is that it's not like the movie's always the same. Like the movie doesn't change.
No.
It's the people watching it that change. And I find that fascinating.
Absolutely.
Like I've watched the same movie twice within like a month, and the first time, I might have a headache and I'm like, oh, I'm not into this. I don't feel like watching it. And then I watch it. That happened to me with 2001: A Space Odyssey. The first time I saw it, didn't get it. And then I watched it again. I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. But the movie hadn't changed. It was just me. So
that's exactly. And that's my story too. I'm a nobody, but I was in a fascinating world for about 35 years. I am from Oklahoma, grew up there and lived there until I was 19 years old. My father died when I was 19, and kind of hit a crossroads. My mom was my remaining parent, and of course, and she had decided at the age of 50 to go back to college and get her nursing degree. And I really wanted to follow my passion, which was film. But of course, there were no opportunities in Oklahoma. So I happened to see a ad in American Film Magazine in March of 1977 for a 6-week summer course with USC and Universal Studios. And I applied and was one of the 50 accepted. And it changed my life. I met a guy who would become my mentor named Howard Kazanjian, who was a USC grad that graduated with George Lucas, and George had just asked him to produce the sequel to American Graffiti. Howard had a long line of films as an assistant director, Hitchcock's Family Plot and Wild Bunch and a lot of classics. And anyway, long story short, during that summer, he would write passes for me to visit the Universal Studios lot in my free time, and I would go to the sound stages of all the television shows that they were doing at the time, Rockford Files and Quincy and Battlestar Galactica and those shows. And would tell them what I learned. And when I finished the course at SC, I came back to Oklahoma and realized I've got to be in LA. So in January of 78, moved out to LA and bugged Howard for probably 8 months. My friend George Campbell says there's a fine line between persistence and stalking. But I tried to be persistent and very respectful, and it paid off. 8 months later, Howard had an opening for a film runner on More American Graffiti, which I got, and ended up staying on at Lucasfilm for several years through Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then came back to Oklahoma for a while, moved back out, and was hired as Steven Spielberg's personal assistant, which I did for 5 years through Goonies, Color Purple, Empire of the Sun, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and realized I really wanted to get into production. I didn't want to be an assistant for the rest of my life. And Dick Donner, who I had met during Goonies, hired me as his production rep on Tales from the Crypt, the HBO series that was shooting, which I did for 2 seasons until I got moved over to Donner's office and became an assistant to the co-producer on Radio Flyer and Lethal Weapon 3. And then when she was bumped to producer on Free Willy, she made me associate producer. And so I was a producer on Free Willy 1, 2, and 3. But during that time, I found a passion for post-production. And as you are well aware, it's where the movie's made. And so I specialized in that and worked mainly with Warner Brothers, although I did a few independent films. But Assassin's, Message in a Bottle, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Also worked with HBO for a while on a production called 61 Asterisk that Billy Crystal directed. So that's really been it. And then after I left Warner Brothers, my brother and I produced and directed a documentary, which Sean Astin executive produced and narrated, called Remember the Sultana. It was a passion project for my brother and I. And since then, it's been, working on various things. But, at my age, I'm 66, it's, it gets a little bit more difficult to have the stamina to endure, a long production and post. And Hollywood's changed a lot. I mean, as you know, it's they're going through a really tough time right now, kind of a crisis of identity, and I don't know how it's going to shake out, but it just makes me glad that my career started in the 70s and ended in the 2000s, and it was a classic time. Worked on some great films, met some great people, and so I can't complain at all.
It's like, one of the most sort of incredible kind of careers I've ever heard of. Like the films that you're naming right now were like, some of the most beloved movies of all time, some of my favorite films, which is just unbelievable. So it's it's always an honor chatting to you. It's always great to chat to you.
So. I appreciate it. I guess I got lucky. I was in the right place at the right time, and met the right people. Had to prove myself every time, but I learned from the best. And so while I didn't end up producing a blockbuster or anything else, I felt where I was where I was supposed to be. And I'm very grateful for the opportunities I had.
Do you revisit these movies that you've worked on over the years? Like, can you watch them from an audience point of view now, even though you've were there behind the scenes for most of it?
Yeah, most of them. I mean, sometimes I'll remember certain incidents, mainly with Goonies and Free Willy and Potter to a certain extent. Some I don't remember being on the set for those scenes, and it always kind of surprises me. I don't know if that's old age or if that's just maybe I wasn't there on those days because I was doing something else for the production. But I mean, for the most part, I still get, I mean, when you're in the movie business, that beyond a certain shot, there was cut, print, moving on. But I've been able to, I guess I've been lucky in that I've been an audience member that got absorbed in a good story, and didn't even occur to me. My brother and I have this thing where we watch. I make dinner, and then we watch 2 episodes of two different television shows, and we've gone through a lot of TV series. But I'm amazed at how I get caught up each night in this new episode or this new plot. And
Hang on a sec.
Sorry. Just take it, Bubba. Come back later.
Sorry, just my daughter.
no problem.
She borrowed my phone. Sorry.
It's okay. Family comes first, believe me.
Yes, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
Sorry.
So anyway, I find that I can still shut most of that out and just enjoy, a movie or a TV show for what it is.
When you're, working on a movie like The Goonies, for example, which is one of the most incredible films I've ever seen, and I got to grow up with that movie as well. Did you know you're working on something that great during production, or are you just you going into it blind?
Yeah, I mean, I maintain that maybe Steven knew, maybe Donner knew, but the rest of us, we just got through the day. There were so many challenges on that film, not the least of which was 7 minors, who required 3 hours of school and an hour of lunch and then an hour of activity, which left very little time. And they were all in almost every scene. So we were just trying to work out the logistics of how the day was going to go. And Dick and Steven were swapping cast members. Steven was doing second unit. Dick was, of course, directing main unit, and drying the kids off, getting them wet, drying them off, getting them wet. It was just a struggle to kind of get through the day and make the day shooting wise. So no, I don't think anybody felt. I think the closest we came maybe to realizing, hey, this is pretty special, is Mike Riva's production design and the construction of the pirate ship, because it was a rarity in Hollywood at that point, which hadn't been, a full-size pirate ship hadn't been built on a soundstage in 40 years at that point. Not since the days of Errol Flynn and Captain Blood, And so when we saw that set, it became the talk of Hollywood, and it became the place to visit and be seen. Everyone from Harrison Ford to Michael Jackson, and so I think with that, because it was such a rarity and such an amazing construction, that we thought, hey, at least we know the production values are great, and we've got a guy at the helm who did Superman and knows how to work with kids. But as far as I think when you make a movie or work on a movie, you're just hoping that, number one, it makes money, and number two, that maybe it has a life, beyond the theater. But when you are involved in something that takes on a life of its own, and is actually grows from generation to generation, because those kids are adults now and sharing with their children, and so on and so on. It really, I get emotional, thinking about that. And I've talked with so many people. In fact, I went to Astoria in 2015. I was invited to the 30th anniversary weekend, and went with Jeff Cohen, and who played Chunk, and Randall Widener, who was Sloth's stunt double. And Astoria, where we shot, has about 10,000 citizens, and 14,000 people came from all over the world that weekend. And it was almost like Mecca. I mean, it was the Goonies house was a shrine, and they just wanted to touch, and have pictures taken out. And I know very few movies that inspire that kind of love and that kind of reverence. I mean, Back to the Future is one, and I'm sure other films do too, but not like Goonies.
I remember my mum showed me the Goonies. I was probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years old, and it was on TV one night. And she sat on the floor next to me, and she's like, "You got to see this movie. It's amazing. These kids go on this adventure." And I sort of saw it through her eyes, the way that she sort of became childlike in explaining to me what was happening. And she's like, "There's this bowling ball that comes down. There's this pirate ship," and I was like, "What is this?" And then it was always if I was homesick from school, it was always on. No matter who was homesick from school, like the Goonies just goes on like straight away. And it's just a very comforting, magical place to be, I think. It just, because you felt like it's one of those movies where you feel like the kids are really going on a real adventure. Like the way that it's shot, the locations that are used, you genuinely believe, because it looks so real, because all the things are sets, and there's no fake backgrounds that a lot of movies have these days. It's all, touching, reach out and touch that sort of stuff. So yeah, a really, really amazing film. Like, do you know what happened to the pirate ship, like after it was used?
Yeah, Warner Brothers actually offered it to Six Flags Magic Mountain, which I believe they owned at the time, and they even offered to disassemble it and assemble it on the side of the park. And Magic Mountain wasn't interested, and no one else was either, and it ended up being dismantled.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's no more.
Like the interior of the ship. Could the kids actually, could cast and crew get inside the ship, or were they
absolutely
somewhere
separate? It was all
separate?
Practical.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow! You worked in all the Free Willy films, I think. Is that
yes?
Is that right? Yeah.
Except for number 4, which I don't consider a Free Willy movie.
Yes, that's correct. I remember loving Free Willy, and I saw Free Willy 2 at the cinema when I was like that perfect sort of age to see it, and wonderful. Like I thought it's probably my favorite one. I think, I don't know, I think maybe the first one's probably got a really amazing script behind it, but the second one for me just felt like a really great adventure sort of movie to go on. What was it like filming the second one?
Well, the second one we shot up in the San Juan Islands off the coast of Washington State, and I mean, it was paradise. It was magnificent. There are 3 resident orca pods that inhabit the San Juan Strait in that area where we were shooting, J, K, and L pods. So seeing orcas out, while we were shooting with the animatronic whales was just normal. It's also a habitat for bald eagles. So, to see our national bird perched in trees. It was just incredible. But, it didn't quite match the magic of the first one. And I think it's because it didn't have Keiko. Keiko was still stranded in Mexico City, although they were the early stages of plans to rescue him and get him out of Mexico. But, and I think the reason the second film didn't do well is because there was a backlash to the fact that we were shooting, a movie about a free orca while the real one was in captivity. And Warner's got a lot of hate mail when we first announced it. So, yeah, and the third one actually came close to being the same kind of feeling as the first one, because the second one didn't do well. They did approve a third one, but we shot it in Vancouver and off, in the local bays up there, and Warner's didn't want to even know about us. They just wanted us to deliver the movie for $20 million and get it released. But I think it had a great storyline, great performances, fantastic music and cinematography. And although I did tell Jenny Lou Tugend, the producer, that if for some reason Warner's wanted to do a Free Willy 4, I suggested we subtitle it Free Willy 4 Beating a Dead Horse.
Right.
So
no more story to be. Yeah, I see what you're saying. There's a scene in Free Willy 2 when the kids go into like that cove area, and they're like, riding the orcas around this little cove, and I've always that scene's incredible. Like I love that scene that he sort of jumps in the water with them. Is he really on a real orca in that scene, or was that like an animatronic type of thing under the water? Or I'm very
No,
curious how that
they
was
were actually
shot.
free swimming animatronic whales. They were tethered out of the side of the orca to a generator, but they could swim freely. I mean, unlike the shark in Jaws, which had an opening on the right side, an opening on the left side, complete contraption on a sled, which could pitch forward and go underwater. These orcas, there were 3 of them actually, because Willy has a sister Luna and a brother Little Spot. They could actually be propelled by the flukes and the pecks, and they could spout water from the blowholes. So it was really ingenious the creatures that Walt Conti of Edge Innovations created, and completely believable. But and we actually shot some of those scenes on location in a real cove in Washington. But the final scene, of course, with the fire, where they're surrounded by fire, was shot in a warehouse in Astoria, and the cove was actually built.
Wow. Yeah, I've always been super impressed with that scene. I'm like, this looks like these kids are really on the orcas here. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was well directed, and Jason Richter had grown into his role as Jesse. Francis Capra and Mary Kay Shellhart were wonderful. It was just that after Goonies, the Free Willy cast was really the one that felt like family the most.
Radio Flyer. What was your role on Radio Flyer?
I was assistant to Jenny Lou Tuvin, who was the co-producer at the time, because we were on hiatus from Tales from the Crypt, and it was either unemployment or I mean, when they gave me the opportunity, I jumped at it. So went on location to Northern California, and then we returned to Columbia to shoot. But it was it was a bittersweet experience, because we lost 2 crew members during the production. To a car accident, actually.
Oh, wow. Oh, no.
Yeah. So
that's not good.
Dick did a great job. It just wasn't maybe the right time for a film like that. The script, it read fantastic, but there was something missing. And Dick did a great job, but there was just something missing. We never could quite identify it.
I really like that movie. I find when the boys get to sort of escape from their family troubles, it always scared me too. Like the father character always kind of scared me because he gets quite abusive, I guess, in some of the scenes, and it was always a very that really affected me. I remember as a kid, I was like, this is it's kind of scary. So when he does get away, it's a great sort of thing at the end. But I haven't seen that movie in a long time. I need to go back and rewatch it. But Elijah Wood's in that film. That's
Elijah and Joey Mazzello, Lorraine Baracco. I think one of the problems is that the interpretation of what happened to Bobby at the end. Did he really fly away? There was speculation that Bobby never existed, that Mike was the older brother was the one who was being physically abused, and that Bobby died, and the euphemism was he flew away. So I think the thing that stung the most was when Newsweek reviewed it. They called it the first feel-good movie about child abuse, and that kind of stung.
Wow. I need to watch it again, because, like I said, I haven't seen it since I was quite young. So I'm curious, how I'd see it now with, like you said, like if I'm a different person now. The movie's still the same, but I've changed. I'm curious how I'd interpret it. But I remember, we used to watch it heaps. It's just on our list of movies that we'd watch over and over again. It was Radio Flyer and Goonies and all those sort of films. Can I ask, working with Steven Spielberg, like what was that like? That seems like the most sort of incredible experience. Yeah.
Amblin, the physical building, the production building was fantastic. I mean, it had every amenity. We had a game room with 6 stand-up video games, and overstuffed couches with fireplaces and a full stocked kitchen. We had a big hot tub out back next to the vegetable garden. Upstairs were two hot tubs with a steam room and a shower. We had a full gym. It was such a comfortable place to be that we felt like we were working from home. So I think that was intentional, I'm sure, because, we had 28 employees when I first joined Amblin. And that first year, we did 5 movies. That's some Steven produced, some, that he directed. The next year, we did 5 movies. So, yeah, there was a lot of pressure. And in Steven's office, it was mainly, our job was to keep, deal with reality for Steven so that he could be free to do what he did best, which was dream. He even told Time Magazine that he dreamed for a living, and it was true. So we tried to keep him in an environment where he could do what he was, most talented at, and we dealt with all the reality. But and as we got closer to production, like on Color Purple and stuff, things could get a little tense. But I worked with wonderful people that had great perspective, and so it never really seemed like we were under huge stress or out of control or anything else. But Steven was always 3 steps ahead. I mean, he knew everything that he wanted and was able to communicate that. And so I would just sit back and be available if he needed me. He whenever he would call me, he never called me by my first name or just by my last name, but he called me by my full name, Mark Marshall. And so it was kind of comforting in a way, but I don't really how to explain it other than it was just a comfortable working relationship that maybe if I went back and deconstructed it would be really stressful. And in the book, I talk about a few things and nothing bad, but just some of the pressures and things. But in retrospect, it doesn't really feel like it was something that was really hard to do. And I think that Stephen, Kathy, and Frank, and just the environment at Amblin kind of made it feel that way.
What's his secret? Like, he seems to continually bring out these incredible films one after the other.
First of all, Stephen is very story centric, so he gets really great writers. But Stephen has a million ideas. I know that John Hughes had a binder that had 700 different ideas that he would just come up with, through his career. And Stephen never had a binder. It was all up in his head. But he would come in of a morning and hand his executive assistant several scraps of paper that had ideas on them, whether it was for amazing stories or features or whatever. And Julie would type them up and put them into the word processor. And that happened every day. And I know I have a audio tape of a story meeting of Goonies with Dick and Steven and Chris Columbus, the writer, and they would top each other with ideas. But one idea would beget another idea, which would be topped with another idea. And there were so many ideas. Only a few of them made it into the movie. Some were just outrageous, but it was that fertile ground for ideas and that maybe could fit into other stories down the road. So that was really one of the joys of getting to work with him. Plus, Steven was very, very organized. When we were shooting Color Purple, at the end of the day, he would call the department heads together, the keys, and he would say, okay, tomorrow morning, We're going to be on a 28 millimeter lens. You're going to lay 50 feet of dolly track, and this is the shot. The next morning, Steven would come in. It was exactly as he asked, and we shot it. At lunch, he would call the keys together again and say, okay, first shot after lunch, we're on a 50 millimeter lens, and I need the crane and this. And it was done. So it was so very efficient. But Steven had the entire movie in his head and knew how it looked before we even got it on film. So that was one of the real joys of watching him work. I think Steven is a prodigy in the sense that Mozart was a musical prodigy. I think Steven, is one of those that comes along every several generations, and maybe he was the embodiment of John Ford. I don't know, but he had just an incredible imagination that never ran dry.
Was it Francis Ford Coppola? I think him saying once that you just need one good idea a day. That's all you need to worry about, and that's how you can be, successful at making films or something. I thought that was really interesting.
Absolutely.
So just always thinking of ideas. I'm somewhat similar in that sense, but I'm not as organized by the sounds of things. But he, very, very inspiring, very inspiring. His films just continue. Oh yeah, just it's almost overwhelming the amount of great stuff that he keeps putting out. So backtracking to the Goonies really quickly. In the Goonies film, there's an alternative ending, and I know that you were responsible, I think, for getting the footage out. Is that right?
Well, I found several years ago I found a VHS tape that I had put several Goonies related things on, and one of them was the dailies. The original ending actually took place up at the house on moving day. The kids are moving boxes. The moving van's there. Troy and his dad stop by to get the paper signed, and Rosalita finds Mikey's marble bag in the washer when it starts making a noise. And that's, and I don't know what was meant to be after that. I haven't even gone back into the script in decades. But Sloth's makeup, unfortunately, Craig Reardon, who created Sloth's makeup, was using a different material, and it just didn't hold up. And Sloth looked terrible in the dailies. So unfortunately, he was let go, and the Bermans were brought in to redesign Sloth's makeup. And that's why the ending was reshot, but it was shot in Bodega Bay because Astoria wouldn't work that time of year. Bodega Bay is where Hitchcock shot The Birds, the little town. So, and we shot out on the coast there. But so that was really the only reason for the new ending. The holy grail for Goonies fans is the gorillas, which were always talked about, and there were actually a couple of pictures of them. But Dick said, the footage was lost and where it never existed, and I had it on tape. So I kind of cobbled it together in a very poorly edited job. Michael Kahn would be ashamed of me. And for the 35th anniversary, which was, of course, canceled because of COVID, I felt that the fans deserved something special. And so I kind of worked up each day and ended with the gorillas and the destruction of Troy's car. And it's all out there now.
That's amazing. The alternative ending really fascinates me because I'm very obsessive over tweaks that are made to films, during production. Like, they might add a little word in here just to help explain everything. And so to have a different ending. So you're saying the main reason the ending was reshot somewhere else was just because of the makeup? It wasn't like a decision to be like, oh, let's just keep them on the beach. Like they would have obviously returned from the adventure and then discovered the marbles. Is that what sort of?
It was Sloth's makeup. It was, but I think also, they realized in reviewing the footage afterwards, and that it really didn't end properly. So, and I think, and the genius was showing the pirate ship at the end. That kind of sealed it. So that wouldn't have happened in the original ending. So
Right.
I'm glad things, worked out the way they did.
I'm not sure if you know Field of Dreams, the Kevin Costner film. I know that
Yeah.
they did test screenings with that movie, and right near the end, when he looks at his father and he says, "You want to play catch?" and they have this catch, and people in the audience didn't understand whether or not the father knew that that was his son, and so the ratings were actually quite low for the film when they tested it, and so they went back and just added in one line of him saying, "Dad," and then the rest of the film, "Do you want to play catch?" And the ratings went off the charts just because of one word. Were test screenings involved much in the films you've worked on? Was that a thing that would happen
Well,
often?
especially for Warner Brothers. I mean, Warner's always required two audience test screenings, and I think every film except Message in a Bottle, which we did 3 test screenings on. Yeah, and you learn from each one. But in the case of Free Willy, Warner's actually, we had an audience preview. We had National Research Group (NRG) there to do the cards, the fill out the cards, and did a focus group afterwards. And when the screening was over, the Warner executives came up, including the co-chairman of the studio, and said, this is a disaster. We can't release this right now. It needs a lot of work. And then the scores came back, and we had the highest test scores in Warner history. We had a 96 from kids, a 93 from parents, and a 90 from teenagers. And suddenly it was, how much do you need to finish the movie? Here's the checkbook. What do you need? Shows that anybody can be wrong about what an audience, how they're going to react or in reading an audience. With Goonies, I think I may actually have audio tape of one of the screenings, one of the test screenings, and it got a lot of reaction. And yet the movie didn't. It was the 9th highest grossing film of the year in 1985, but it really didn't do that well because the movie that came after, that Steven also produced, called Back to the Future, made $300 million. We made 70, and both have kind of become classics since then. But Goonies especially, because it touched on themes closer to childhood than Back to the Future did, of course. So yeah, you just never know. But Steven was actually one of the very few directors, because he didn't have to, who would do test screenings. Once Steven was happy with the cut and locked it, that was it. No reshoots, no alternate endings, anything. I think there were maybe 1 or 2 films in his career where he felt that maybe he wasn't quite sure about, so he did test them. I don't know what films those are. I just know there were 1 or 2.
So do you have groups of people, cast and crew, that are watching the film, or is it just a very small amount of people that will see it before it's released?
Well, in Steven's case, it was usually friends. We called them family and friends screenings at Warner Brothers, but it was just kind of a hand-picked audience. Usually Marvin Levy, Steven's publicist, would kind of reach out because he knew what kind of mix needed to be there, and would get people in. We, with NRG, who did the Warner Brothers screenings, they would go to malls and just say, "Hey, do you want to see this movie?" And the only thing about LA now, of course, is that over the years, that Los Angeles audiences got so, or Southern California audiences got so savvy and knew the power they kind of had, that they would kind of stack the deck or interfere. So Warner's had to kind of go further out into Arizona or up to San Jose or to Dallas to get a real audience reaction. That didn't happen on our film and on Free Willy. It was a really great audience. It was a family audience, and one of the things we found out in the focus group, which changed the film for us, was that there was a lot of bad language in Free Willy to begin with, and one person said, "I don't know why you need the language. It's great as it is." And So we went back and took out every bad language. I think I may have left one hell in there or something, but I mean, it was, Jesse was swearing, and most of it was kind of off camera. The only problem we had was that there's a scene where Randolph and Jesse go down to the observation room, and the tank is leaking, and Randolph bends down and picks up a bolt that has been sheared off, by Wade and his guys, and Randolph looks at it and goes, "Son of a bitch!" And he was on camera, so we had to figure it out. So I suggested saying it's part of the tank, and it kind of matched the lip movements. And
wow.
So we were systematically able to one by one remove the bad language, and they were the audience member was right. It didn't need it at all.
Yeah, it's fascinating just having someone else's perspective on something you worked on, and it's usually people have got really good ideas. I think most people do. Other people will, try to nitpick, 1,000 things out of your film, but the majority of people are happy just to say, like, I think it's just that one little thing that the film needs or doesn't need. I think the doesn't need stuff I find interesting. That stuff you can take out.
Well, we have to face it. I mean, filmmakers lose objectivity over time, and an audience seeing it for the first time is much more objective and can see things that the filmmakers don't. So, although it can also work in reverse. I mean, in Free Willy 3, our young protagonist, whose father is an illegal whaler, has his sights on Willy with a harpoon, and he makes the kid try to harpoon Willy. And in the beginning of the movie, we had a scene where the kid has set up various objects on a fence, and he picks them off one by one with his BB gun to show what a great shot he is, so that later on, when he misses with the harpoon, we know he's done it on purpose because he doesn't want to hurt the whale, the orca. And but an audience member again got up and said, "Oh, I hate guns." And from that moment, the gun was out, the scene was out, and so it was, it wasn't as clear. So it can work both ways, but it didn't.
Yes,
I don't think it ruined the movie.
Yeah, it can sometimes take just that one person that can disrupt everything. I know that happened with Married with Children. I remember back in the day they had one complaint of someone saying this show's far too rude and crude, and
really?
I think the producers just went, "Oh well," and just kept going, and it became this massive sort of hit. They didn't let it get to them, but this one woman. But now with the internet, like, what are your thoughts on the internet with things like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb scores, and how people are trying to put a number on how they enjoy a film and all that sort of stuff? Do you think that's good for films, or do you think it's sort of people are following it too much and they go see a movie that's got a really great rating and they're disappointed, or vice versa, because they're trying to follow the trends, I guess?
Well, the thing is, film is subjective. And what I think is a great movie, you may hate. It's, as you said earlier, it's about our experience and how we relate to the subject. So I think that, and with the internet, anything can be altered just by a few comments that could be placed there by bots or people who intend to, affect the outcome of the reaction to a film. So, no, I'm not particular. And that all started with Harry Knowles of the Ain't It Cool News website. And unfortunately, this desire to know everything about a movie before it even comes out has kind of ruined it for everybody. But I don't pay attention to critics' reviews. I don't pay attention to audience reviews, frankly, because, again, their experience is different from mine, and they may have been in a bad mood when they watched a movie. And it's not. I've found movies that people just hated that I loved. So I try to keep my own counsel where movies are involved.
Oh, thank you so much. It's very entertaining to talk to you and very educational at the same time. So thank you very, very much, because it feels like a dream when I'm chatting to you just about all the things that you've done. I'm like, I can't believe them.
Well, thank you,
talking
Glenn.
to yourself. So, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and my best to you and your family.